Hi, welcome to my channel. My name is Cherie, and today is Trash Thursday. This is the day that we throw out the trash. So one of the things that we need to throw out with the trash is our medical system. And let me tell you why. Hold on. You remember when I was telling you that, for every force there's an opposing force? Well, the federal government, Medicare, has decided to go ahead and help people on Medicare get the peptides and the medication that will help them to lose weight. Okay? First of all, unbelievable the way the Medicare scams and the medical scams that has been going on. Unbelievable. So far it's been thousands of people that are facing charges. Okay? So let's talk about it. Okay. I want to talk about it because how many times have people lost their job because their physician charged extra fees in order to fill out forms that's needed by your employer? How many times have people not received disability because your doctor did not want to fill out the forms or was charging excessive fees? I know when I had to fill out, and this was a while back ago because I haven't been in, the workforce in a while, but I needed some forms filled out for disability, and the doctor wanted me to give them $250 to fill out those forms. And I was on, bed rest for a minute. And I'm like, I can't even afford, to barely pay my bills, and I need a disability to survive. What do you mean, $250 to fill out the forms? Now, before, they used to accept like an office visit charge, right? You had to come into the office and they filled out the forms during your office visit. That's what they used to do. Ooh, I would say probably more like 20 years ago, right? But I don't understand, how we let our medical system, sell us out this way. And a lot of medical professionals, are really, upset, at the disgrace of our medical industry, that a lot of them are quitting their jobs, right? A lot of them know that, people are not getting the proper care that they're supposed to be getting, or say a hospital will refuse a treatment, a procedure, a surgery, declaring that, that person is too old, or that person is not likely to make it, or, it's really weird. Basically, selling out, playing God, right? Because, they don't care and they don't know, the mission and the purpose of that person. All they know is the mission and purpose of the hospital, or all they know is how that might affect their success rate. Stuff like that. Okay? So, this is something that I really feel needs to be addressed, right? Especially if the government says, they're providing this service, then it gets counterbalanced with these obstacles that totally offset the benefit that the government was trying to intend, right? How does that happen? Well, in my mind, it happens because there are people who are saying, oh, they're just making more work for us, and we're not getting paid for it. And then they get that bright idea. Oh, well, what we'll do is we'll go ahead and we'll charge them to fill out the forms. And like I said, how many people have experienced that where it's more than just an office visit. It's more than, a specialty visit charge. It's a full-on, outlandish charge, a fee, that they do that, like I said, what it does is it just puts people in a very harsh predicament, even though the government was trying to, put them in a better predicament. It's a better predicament to have, disability insurance if you happen to get injured, whether you're, basically it's probably when you're not at the job. At the job, that's supposed to be covered through workers' comp. Disability is usually something that has happened when you were not at work. Or you're working and you don't have, benefits to the point like you're a contractor or something like that. So you have to go through, your doctor proving that, you can't work and you need help and you need disability. And I think that's also where the confusion came about, that, oh, you can't work and so you need disability. So it started to be interpreted as a welfare system, right? You can't work because, oh, you have mental illness. You can't work because, you have autism. You can't work because, it's strange how, you could have missing body parts, but they'll swear up and down that, there are, accommodations that will allow you to work. But it's the mental and the emotional deregulation that can't be quantified. Right. But then at the same time, it takes a lot of test and study to actually designate somebody. Just like when it comes to, how we heard that the professional medical field did not want to use the word narcissist, right? Because narcissism is a mental disease, right? And yet, people are being, hurt because their unwillingness, to utilize and the term, okay? So, I don't know what kind of fear, man had put into the general public that said, well, if you designate me as a narcissist, you know, you're going to interfere with my ability to make money because nobody's going to want to do business with me. And, you know, I don't think it's just that. I don't think it was just a lawsuit of that magnitude. I think it was more like, you know, definite threats and guaranteed long-term feuding. So yeah, so I just want to put it out there, you know, that, you know, a lot of things that I have heard, and I've watched many medical professionals who will, you know, talk about, you know, some of the issues that they were faced with, you know, and even some, you know, surgeons and you know, and doctors out there, you know, who, you know, basically, you know, have a black heart trying to stay in an industry that is supposed to care about the life of people, but actually has just become, you know, another means to make money. And that's the saddest part of it, of all of it. You know, the things that people will do, you know, to make money, right? And sometimes the same people that will do anything to make money, you know, will do anything to corrupt people with their money, right? And that's what we have seen, that these people, you know, who feel like, you know, hurt people, right? They had to do this and do that, you know, it was a struggle, you know, and, you know, but they were able to, you know, to make it, right? And then once they made it, you know, then they wanted to turn around and see other people struggle just as hard or harder than they had to make money. Which, you know, they don't even see that the reason why they're even acting that way is because, you know, they're hurt people and they're out here hurting other folks, right? But we live in this society where everybody's denying that they're even hurt. Nobody wants to admit that they are hurt, and yet we see it. We see it because we have all of these overweight people, and let's be honest, people overeat, whether it's emotional eating or eating for protection, you know. Yeah, you know, because one of the things that had really crossed my mind was, my goodness, for them to legalize homosexuality, I think was grounded in, you know, trying to legitimize the raping of men by making it seem like, well, men are in relationships with men. Therefore, you know, he can always, you know, have that, you know, back door, or if he has the ability to make it look like, you know, it was consensual, right? But as long as, you know, homosexuality was illegal, then, you know, a homosexual could press charges and be believed, you know, a lot more than, you know, now, because now, you know, we have, you know, men, you know, not only agreeing to be in relationships with other men, but also in marriages with other men. right? And I'm like, what could possibly make a man, you know, get off track that way, right? Where they don't want a family, they don't want to, they don't want the respect of what it is to be a man, because being a man is probably, well, at this point, at this time, being a man is the most respectable position on the planet. And what would make a man decide that that's not what he wants? Except the only thing that came to my mind, was downloaded to me, was the fact that, this was somebody that was told by a man, he could have a life of sex and being taken care of and not have to worry about, having to be a provider. And that's like, what? This is what they wanted for our sons? Damn you, Obama. Okay. Let's throw the trash out. Now, mind you, Obama only has 2 girls that we know of, right? So maybe he felt like, let these men, be with other men, especially if they're not going to be good to the women. I don't know. He's never really just, point blank said, what it was that prompt him to make homosexuality legal. I know we hear a lot of times where people will say, oh, well, love is love, and it's just like, yeah, but, shouldn't you also consider the love of the family, that raised you to be a son, for however many years, until somewhere along the line you got derailed. Anyway, let's throw that shit out with the trash. I mean, if they were ever going to reverse a decision, within the course, I think should be that one. I mean, I don't have any sons, but I know one thing, if I raise my son and I see him every day, being a boy and growing up into being a man, and then all of a sudden, he comes to me, the same way that my brother had came to me when we were sitting at the table, and he was crying. He was like, they broke me when I was in prison, and I just don't know what I would do. I don't know what I would do. Thank God I don't have no sons, and it ain't happened to me. Hold on. Oh yeah, and not to mention, this whole acceptance of homosexuality has now become the biggest allocations of resources and medicine, right? Instead of Planned Parenthood in our neighborhoods, we now have HIV centers. Instead of, and this is where y'all got it wrong. When women said they wanted equity, they weren't saying they wanted to be with women. They didn't say they wanted an effeminate man. Right? And this happens through what? Cognitive dissonance. This is twisting stuff to the point where, you just want to be right, even though you're wrong, and then trying to force yourself to be right, you just make it more wrong. Like, throw it out with the trash, man. My God. And then the operations the injections, the the cosplay, oh my gosh, it's unbelievable, right? Because they have to keep generating, money in order to live a certain lifestyle. And it is a lifestyle. So wouldn't a gay man be a Jezebel? You know, I'm trying to stop men from stopping women from being locked up in the house, and not being able to take care of themselves or get a job or, whatever. Right now, it can be a choice because women are the nurturers, of the children. Right? But it should be a choice. It shouldn't be, women forced to do it. And like I said, there's the cognitive dissonance. Can we throw this shit out with the trash, damn it?